Hi, my name is Carl Lilrud, and you're listening to the Scene World podcast.
Sup? It's the Scene World podcast. I'm AJ. That's Jurg over there.
Hi.
Hi. So in a minute, who are we talking to today?
Deniz Orbay
Deniz Orbay.
about retro gaming in Japan.
Yes.
And because he is kind of he is a Japanese expert, and we wanted to concentrate on Japan, especially since you, AJ, mentioned it a couple of times. You wonder what happened with Commodore and other stuff in Japan, as we never hear much from it. So I sat together with Martin Amann discussing what we can do about this topic, and then we came to the conclusion that we ask Deniz Orbay to talk to us.
Yes.
So this will be a part of a series.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Yes. That was always my contention was always that, Commodore existed in Japan. It was a company. They released a C64. I mean, they released a Japanese specific model of the C64 in Japan. So to not have any kind of a demo scene or anything like that, or even a retro scene, seemed a little off to me, because they are. I mean, there are a lot of retro things going on over there. There's I've heard of vending machines that'll kick out retro stuff. It's not like retro is not a thing in Japan. It's just that the 64,
different kind of thing.
The 64 you don't quite hear about as much, or at all. So this sort of came from my confusion around that.
Right. Well, I mean, it's the similar situation where we spoke with the Yandex Computer Museums guys about the situation in Russia that you never hear much about outside of Russia.
Right.
So it's just that outside of the particular country, you never hear much. Or did you know that video games were illegal in Venezuela? We didn't know before we didn't have the Petro, planners talking to us about it.
Right.
So sometimes it's good to have people that are specialized and knowledgeable about a certain region of the world. And and then of course there's unfortunately still a thing of language barrier, which, as you know me, I take it in my personal life as a non-issue, but as we also know, a lot of people take it as an issue to talk in English to an international audience.
Speaking of language issues, people may notice that Jurg doesn't sound quite himself today, and that's because his microphone broke. So he's using the built-in webcam microphone to record this.
Yeah, the mini USB connector broke off. And that is actually why the industry changed to micro USB, because mini USB isn't as sturdy as the micro USB.
Right.
And since this was an old model from 2014, the Samsung Meteor microphone from 2014, it's still using mini USB.
Yeah.
So actually, what happened to me is that the connector broke off, which is exactly what happens if you put too much stress on it and disconnect cables. And I mean, I always have it moving because I don't have it constantly sitting on my desk.
A mini USB is kind of like it's the sort of like hourglass shaped one.
Yeah.
And the micro is more of a little
round.
Yeah.
Yeah, and especially because of these requirements, for example, loading cables for smartphones. They really developed micro USB to be more sturdy.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, really? Okay, that's oh, really that's so uncommon to see that. It's really USB-B.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, I was not expecting that because usually this is not used for microphones and stuff.
Oh, but
Wow.
maybe the Snowball Ice doesn't use it then.
Okay, well, so first bit of news is the online store of Protovision is back up.
Okay. Didn't know it was down.
We had it in the last,
Oh,
we
okay.
had it in the podcast before the
That's right.
last one
That's right. We did.
that
Yes.
they disabled it because of Corona
Mm,
and too much problems and private life and stuff, and now
yes.
it resumed. And also they put it on a new provider, which means it's a faster web poster, so it should be faster than before.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah, which is which is nice. But personally, me accessing for Germany, I didn't really feel any slowdowns, but perhaps that was just me.
I didn't either. But it's always nice to be faster.
I mean, the web page
In most things.
is like 20 years old, so
Hmm.
it's
Yeah.
not really resource intensive in the first place.
Hmm.
Um, well, and the second bit of news is the um, Richard Painter, who made a game 34 years ago that was called Warren and was supposed to be released by Firebird. Actually, he got in touch with games that were in 64 and actually finished the game
Oh,
after 34 years. Yeah,
nice.
and he
God, that must
finished
have
it.
sucked. That must have been a rough thing to do because
Yeah,
I have trouble picking up code after I haven't looked at it in a week. Imagine
yeah.
34
Well, he
years.
was 17 years back then when
Yeah.
he started coding it. Um, yeah, and now it can finally be completed without using sheets. And he also added some sound effects and music that was missing,
Okay.
and the title screen. So now it can be downloaded and played from games that weren't 64. Um, it was originally supposed to come out by Firebird.
Is it still a game that wasn't though? Because now it is a game that is.
Right, yes. Right. It was originally developed by Richard Painter, as said before,
Hmm.
as a sort of top-down challenge-based arcade game.
Right. Right.
And, well, he felt the need to finally finish and release it to the world.
Excellent.
Yeah.
That's always a good thing. I like having things finally released and
Me too, me too.
yeah, and
Yeah.
discovered. I remember when I pulled out all my C64 stuff and started going through old discs, like the things that I discovered that were like, ooh, this is and now trying to figure out what to do with them because it's like, okay, I've got some things that we can release, and how do I go about doing this? I don't want to just dump it out into the world and be like,
Well,
here's a 80% finished web or demo page that no one ever bothered to finish with.
well, in '98, I recovered the original discs from the coder of Legends of Kirill,
Hmm.
the round-based strategy game, and gave it to so many groups and people, but nobody ever finished it. And that's a pity because Andrew Fisher made the title music for it, and it's supposed to be 80% complete.
Do you still have it?
And sure, I have it.
Okay.
And I mean, I sent it 4 years ago to games that weren't.
Hmm.
But honestly, David Simmons,
Yes,
Jazz Cat.
I know Dave. Yeah.
Soon means like never. Will never be released.
Hmm.
Which is a shame.
I've never gotten that impression from him, but
I don't think it will ever see the light of the day.
oh, okay.
And I gave up asking him about it. Was it always the same answer?
Yeah.
Soon. So, games that weren't. If
Yes.
you really want to release the game, release it. You got the discs.
Yes.
Put it out there.
Yes.
Yeah.
My bit
So
of news.
sometimes it's just a matter of time or motivation, not of finding the discs.
Yeah, and it's also
Interestingly, by the way, what you didn't know is they never updated their homepage. They never really said on their homepage that I gave them the original discs, and they were supposed to finish it. So
Well, a lot of times it comes down also to the kind of interest that the game is going to have. Like was it something that would have been a big game back in the day, or is it something that's
it's been a big game back in the day, definitely.
Okay.
I mean, it's I think it was 35 double-sided discs.
Oh Jesus Christ! 35 discs.
I mean, let's see. I mean, I have the email with all the disc images from Andrew Fisher.
35 discs.
Wait. How much? Let's see.
That couldn't have been like no, that was like work files and stuff, like final release.
Yeah,
one disc.
Right.
Yeah, I can see it taking a while too when you're dealing with 35 discs.
Yeah. Ooh. Yeah. Well, the last news I got is they will take a look in 2018. That was 3 years ago. Never happened.
Well, again, they could still. I mean, something like that many discs and that much work could take. And again, this is a hobbyist activity, so it might take a little bit of time to get it done. So they may be working on it. It might not be an issue of.
I highly doubt it. I highly doubt it. I don't think they even looked at it. That's what I think.
Well.
And I will keep it in so they can correct me if I'm wrong, but they never got back to me on this. So Frank Gasking, if you listen to this or anybody, please get back to me on this because I'm tired of asking and getting always the same answer like soon, next year. And from my perspective, they never really looked at it. Which is such a shame because I sent it to so many people, so many cracker groups, and everybody told me like, yeah, we will look into it. Nobody ever did in 22 years.
I mean, looking into it is one thing, but actually doing something with it is another thing.
But if you even don't look into it, nobody gave me a feedback if it's really 80% done, if it can be done. Nobody ever gave me feedback in 22 years. So what people don't know is the lengths that I went through. Because what people don't know, that Crystal Software, Netherlands, never. The reason why the game wasn't finished is that Crystal Software in the Netherlands, which is important because there's also Crystal Software in UK, stopped paying them because they didn't see a market. They stopped paying the developers in Austria. And I went through the lengths to contacted Alex de Vries in the Netherlands, asking him about it. I had long phone calls with him as a teenager for many weeks. And then I tracked down the project leader in Austria and had a phone call. And he actually scrambled and found the discs and sent it to me by post. Because back then people didn't really have internet in '98 in Germany.
Right.
So, and then I made copies of that and sent it to people like Robin Harper, like Games That Weren't. Even Protovision got a copy. So, I made physical copies. And actually it was Andrew Fisher who digitized them into D64 files. And also the problem was that 1 or 2 discs had read errors. So even that had to be sorted out to prevent further damage to the discs
Right.
So this was all before internet, before I had Skype, WhatsApp, or whatsoever. So this whole thing was damn expensive to make, and I went through lengths to get those discs to rescue the game that nobody even had the guts to go through and tell me if it's possible or not. Everybody just told me, send me the discs, I will look into it, and not a single person did for 22 years. So you can't tell me that it has to do with doing a side project if nobody even has the guts to look into it and tell me, like, can it be done or not? No. There should have been enough time in 22 years to at least look at what is in there, because I'm not a coder. I can't tell. I only see, okay, seems to be like graphic assets. This seems to be sound assets. That's all about it. So I keep sending those discs to people, to crackers and groups. Of course, nowadays I do it by email. As long as one person finally looks into it and gives me a real perspective if it can be finished or not. And until then, I consider it a scam because nobody really had the guts going into it and tell me it can be done. So all those big people who got those images from me, nobody ever really gave me any feedback other than, yeah, I will look into it next year. And that's and until then, I don't take such things like Games That Weren't and other cracker groups honest when they say, yeah, we do everything we can to rescue games. No, they don't. They don't.
It seems weird because all these cracking groups will crack. I mean, they'll crack games before they're even released at this point. It's like if you put out the crappiest, basic game, it'll be cracked the next day. So you would think that they'd be on it somewhere. So maybe it's send me the disc, send me the images.
Sure, it's one click of email. I can send you.
Yeah. Yeah, because I can at least I can tell you from my perspective as a coder.
Originally when we formed Scene World, it was among our plans to actually finish the game. But what happened then is that Robin Harper dropped off the surface of the Earth for us.
Right.
So we didn't have anybody to look into it. But yeah, sure, I can send you the discs. Sure.
I don't know. I'm not so sure that Robin would be up to completing. I'm probably not up to completing the game, but
anyway,
I can look at them. And,
I sent him the discs too to the Canada, which was that was all before there was digital, before there was internet. So I didn't have internet, so I couldn't just send the D64 images. Let's see. Anyway, let's see if this piece of the news will.
Grape fest.
It's just my honest opinion. When I read we found a new game, we completed the game, we spent 5 years completing the game. Yes, but nobody spent the I don't know how much days or hours to give me feedback on can it be completed or not. Actually, I found the email from Andrew. So it's a 15 double-sided discs. It has been 15.
Okay.
Yeah, that is where the name where my 30 comes from. It was 30 disc sides. Yeah. That means 15 games. 15 double-sided discs.
Yes. Right.
Yeah, and And up to today, I kept it a secret. I never said to people that, to the public that I sent the discs around. But since nobody is doing anything with it, now I can say it.
Hey, if anyone listening wants to do something with it.
Yeah, sure.
Email him and...
yeah. Anyway, I forwarded now the email to you.
Okay.
So let's see if you have an opinion about it, or if you think that the 80% complete was total bull crap.
Yeah, I'll take a look.
Yeah. Anyway, those to news.
Yes,
I'm
okay.
sorry for the rant.
That's okay. That's okay.
But every time I read that yeah, he completed the game, I'm like, yeah, sure you did.
So,
I mean, it's a wonderful project, right?
yes, right.
But not being taken seriously really hurts. But now everybody knows the story of the lengths I went through as a 16 years old teenager, speaking to adults in foreign countries, having a big phone bill. I remember my mom was totally mad on me. 50 euros just for a phone call? Are you crazy?
I had a few days.
It's like, yeah. Well, I had a a greater good. I'm like, yeah. And my mom is of course like, who cares about a computer game, you know? And actually, I still remember the discs were sent in a Mozart pralines box.
Okay.
Which is Mozart pralines are the chocolate, the sweets,
Right.
Sweets that Austria is known most for. So it was like, from Austria with love, with a special touch.
Nice.
It still had the smell, so it was a fresh box of
chocolate flavored discs. Nice.
Yeah, right. Anyway, your piece of news.
Yeah, my news with this is they've just announced the very first Amstrad CPC ASCII competition. And the site is Logiker, that's with a K.com. It's the first Amstrad ASCII competition, beginning in June 2021, which is now. The deadline is the deadline is June 30th. So chop if you want to enter that, and it'll be presented and released on July 3rd and 4th, and the results will be announced on July 10th and 11th. And
nice.
And there will be prizes like Steam codes and stuff like that. And there's the rules. We'll put a link in the podcast description where you can read the rules, where you can see all the stuff that how you can vote and all that whatnot.
Logiker, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
that's the guy that was responsible for the German Digital Talk disc make until recently.
Right. Yeah.
We had him mentioned a couple of times in the news.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that is happening. Put a link to that so everyone can go do that, because Petsky, or Jack ASCII as I like to call it, and just regular ANSI and stuff gets a little bit more attention than everybody else. So let's see what the Amstrad can do.
Yeah, there are more and more games released by it.
Yeah. Yep. So that's all I got.
Nice.
So should we?
Now I have to decide whether I want to leave the preserved games rant in or not.
Well, I mean, that's up to you. I'm not.
Yeah, it still makes me sad. Me sad.
Yeah.
I went through all those lengths as a teenager, and nobody is taking the effort, at least looking at the discs and giving me feedback.
Yeah.
And I got tired of asking.
Yeah.
It's the same with Last Ninja 4. That I think it was 50 years ago. We had an interview with the guy, and turned out they didn't find a potential graphic artist, so the game never finished. Which is a shame, because they got a license or an agreement for the original producer to finish the game Last Ninja 4 for this 64. Never happened.
Yeah.
System 3, by the way, still exists nowadays. Of course, they are doing games for Switch and so on, and they still say on their homepage and their Facebook that in a few years they will make a Kickstarter for the new Last Ninja game. So we are still waiting for that. I mean, when was the last entry about that? 2017 or something?
Something like that.
I
Yeah.
will link to that. Yeah, but I was actually talking to a friend about it. He was surprised, like, System 3 is still around? I'm like, yeah, of
Oh yeah.
course.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Doing Switch games of giant builder or whatever. So, well, uh, John Q. Public Games.
Yeah. Well, we should probably get to the interview now because we've talked for half an hour. Or we griped for half
Right.
an hour. So
I lost it a bit.
yeah, that's okay.
Okay, well, talk to you then.
Yes.
Enjoy the interview.
Which is right there.
Today we have another guest as always, and today it's Deniz Orbay, and you are a Japanese retro expert. That's wonderful.
Thanks for the call, guys, and thanks for inviting me to this podcast session. So yeah, hi everybody, my name is Dennis. I'm an avid retro, I would say video game player, and by now retro player for more than 25, 26 years now.
Oh.
I started back when I was a little child playing like Super Nintendo with my friends who were allowed to own one. My parents forbid me back then. And with like 11, 12 years, I got a Game Boy from my grandparents. Afterwards, then my parents caved in and bought me a Sega Saturn. And since then, basically, I'm rolling the video game highway, so to speak, especially with a focus on Japanese games, which I started take a liking for. Back then, even like 20, 22 years ago, when the Sega Saturn, my parents bought me one, and my father went to Hong Kong for a business trip and brought me back like a stack of Japanese Saturn games. That's basically when I was hooked, together with like getting a very high interest in Japanese subcultures, animation, manga, those kind of things, like the classic entry drugs into the Japanese subcultural world, I would say. And since then, basically, I'm still hooked to Japanese, especially Japanese retro gaming, and still love them to this day.
And there are two special things about you. You are collecting Neo Geo games that sometimes are in their thousands of value, and you are fluent in Japanese.
That's correct. Due to my interest in like Japanese animation and video gaming and everything connected to Japan, I finished like high school back in 2003. Already started learning Japanese way back in 2000 when I was like 16 years old. Like we had like these little small books from Dupont or how they're called, and you could like do it yourself learning. I mean, after some couple of months, I figured out that's crap. Like you don't really learn a new language, at least not an Asian language, by doing it yourself books.
Yeah.
Which is why I started back then in 2000, going regularly to Japanese language classes in Frankfurt here. Saturday morning starting at 8 a.m. So Friday night parties were a no-go for me because like 6 a.m. in the morning I would be sitting already in the train to Frankfurt for learning Japanese. And I basically stick to learning Japanese and to the fascination that the country and its culture gave me. So I started also then after graduating high school, I started studying Japanese and Japanese culture and business administration, so all the three of them together at university. Lived some time afterwards in Japan, and I am also, due to my time spending over there, married to a Japanese woman, which helps me tremendously, of course, to keep up with my Japanese language, to keep them up my Japanese language skills and not lose them or like start to forget them, because people tend to forget something like that very quick if you don't use it in your daily life, which I do. So big thanks to my wife. Thanks to her, I'm still.
Now, can she speak German and or English?
Well, yeah, that's like the downside to it. I have to admit, she speaks German enough to live here and also English, but not as fluent as I am in Japanese, I admit.
Oh, okay. So then you're essentially forced to keep up on your Japanese.
Yeah, probably. If I didn't have like been that fluent in Japanese, maybe her German would have gotten better and more fluent. So that's like the downside to that. she paid the cost for me to keep my Japanese skills. I am to admit.
Okay, interesting.
So yeah, that's
So basically, you know 4 languages: Turkish, German, English, and Japanese.
Exactly.
But you're not working as a translator for some reason.
Yeah, no, translation actually requires another couple of years of separate studying at university.
I see.
You need a separate master, I think, if I'm not mistaken. I know Japanese friends of mine who are translators, and it's a harsh business environment. Like the clients most of the time are very ungrateful, and you're happy if you can pay your bills and rent, basically.
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
So you rather focus on collecting Neo Geo games.
Exactly. That's like other people buy stock trades, or Warren Buffett also does stock trading and stuff like that. I buy Neo Geo games.
Well,
Yeah.
we're no stranger to that. I mean, looking behind any of us, and you can,
Yeah.
there's plenty of fortitude happening, So
Who has?
I would say on the scala of 1 to not very healthy fascination, I would say we're probably very high on the scala.
Yeah, well, so let's talk a bit about this topic. I mean, what is going on retro-wise in Japan? I mean, I was in Tokyo in 2017, and I was there right at the time when Sonic Mania was released. And before that, I actually had a podcast interview with Sega about it. And interestingly, I saw that next to the machine, next to the Super Mario Kart machines and stuff they had over there, they also had PCs that were stuck into arcade cabinets running Sonic Mania. And then I would wonder, why would people even do that if it's exact the same game you would have on PCs at home? That didn't make much sense to me.
Actually, I think some of those those computer those solutions, they're not actually regular personal computer like B2C market devices. Those actually dedicated arcade computers. For example, some companies like Konami, they've got still the dancing games, the rhythm games, and you can buy basically what the arcade center owners would do is they would buy one of those stationary cabs or lease them from the publishers and have them connected to the internet and regularly download new updates, games, or subscriptions in order to run the games on the arcade cabs. It's not anymore like in the past. You've got a PCB board, you ram it, the JAMA connector into it. Most of the games that nowadays, like those rhythm games from Konami, they're based on a subscription model.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what you saw there, basically. That was a dedicated station for arcade gaming. Because, I mean, like you all know, JAMA or PCB-based games, I mean, there's retro now, that's the past. But the games that are still left nowadays and are running on rather high level quality and graphics, I'd say most of them run on like those kind of dedicated stations and not on old-fashioned PCB boards anymore.
Right.
Which is interesting because in 2012, when I was in Brazil, they used MAME PCs.
Yeah, Brazil is a very special. The whole of South America, they're very into MAME, which I mean from an economic perspective makes sense because the income of a lot of people is not very high. It's not like you can afford a $60 to $70, $80 game, have it imported from the US, worst case, pay taxes on it. So I mean, MAME is also from in the Middle East, like in Turkey or in some of the Arab countries, is still very famous, very loved. A lot of people I know that from South America play on MAME. So it's probably more common that you're gonna find a MAME setup instead of a regular real gaming cab.
Yeah.
Hey, you fixed your webcam.
Suddenly you're
That's
not
nice.
dark anymore.
My poison dart fox went now dark, so that's why.
Wow.
Another
nice.
topic for another time.
So anyway, I heard a lot of times from community people, especially on Twitter, saying that retro and arcade in Japan is going down, and
Well,
even
an interesting
in Japan,
thing.
the arcades are closing. I don't know if
Well,
that's
interesting thing with Japan that is always confused me was that there was we're talking about retro in Japan. The Commodore 64 was released in Japan. There were Atari machines released in Japan. A lot of times they were made in Japan, and yet software and scenes for them are not something that we've ever really seen. Like there was no demo scene for the C64 in Japan that is, visible to us.
No, I don't think it took off like that much, or like it did here in Europe, especially, or in the US. Also, what you should not forget is that in Japan back then, Sharp, the X86,000, or the Fujitsu FM Towns, or of course also the PC98 had very strong footholds in the local market. And I just recently, it's really interesting, I read an article that especially NEC, or like also with the PC98, they would basically have a monopoly on the market and strangle out and kick mob out all the other competitors. So I think that's also the reason why like Commodore and those kind of devices had probably a tougher standing in Japan, comparable to like nowadays with like Microsoft and the Xbox consoles.
Right.
So I don't think back then it really that there was that much of a scene like it was here in Europe or the UK, for example, or Netherlands. But I do know, for instance, that nowadays there are the so-called retro legend, I think, was it events and festivals, before pre-corona, of course, where people would actually meet and exchange demos, exchange their own program custom game, their own games, shareware, and those kind of things. Also like graphics demos they've produced on the devices, and so it's a bit similar, but on a much smaller scale, I'd say.
Right.
Would be interesting to have some links or info or perhaps pictures about it, because that is something, as AJ said, I never heard about it myself. So it's interesting to see.
Well, I think it was either
you don't have to send them now. You can
Legend.
send them later on.
Yeah, you can send them later, and we put it overlay during the video version of the interview, if you like. Yeah, and I also saw that the prices went quite high on certain games. I think the most rarest game on the Game Boy is actually CES. I remember CES. I was buying it 4 years ago for 60 euros.
What's it called?
CES. ZAS.
It's a shooting game basically on Game Boy.
ZAS.
Exactly.
Yeah. Exactly.
It was like a mid-level expensive game, I'd say, a couple of years ago. Then it basically took off, exploded, and nowadays you pay, like, depending on the condition and whether it's CIB or not, you pay up to $1,000, if I'm not mistaken.
Exactly.
Why?
And I paid 60 euros 4 years ago for the same condition. I was like, oh my god, how did it raise so much in the last 4 years?
Why did it raise so much?
There is actually, like, the Japanese retro game market adheres to its own rules, to be honest. I think sometimes a lot of things don't make sense at all. Well, for once, of course, there's still Japanese retro games are loved by the Japanese people themselves. Although I'd say like this kind of hardcore collecting or like deep dives into the retro scene in gaming hobby is still rather niche. But
Really?
your average Japanese guy and family will still know the Famicom games. They will maybe buy a couple of them for like, let's say maybe $10-20. So the real hardcore collectors are still rather like, compared to the regular gamers, a niche. But there's obviously a very big influx of foreign retro game collectors who go to Japan, buy up as much as they can, and drive either a fly back home, or you've got, of course, local resellers that buy up the games and sell them outside to other countries. And I mean, the Japanese are not stupid themselves. They see they cannot buy a game for, like, say, $100, and they know they can sell it for $250 on the internet to foreign collectors. I mean, why not? They're going to do the same thing. So
Right.
what you got right now is that you got a lot of resellers, a lot of people who I think wanted those games or were interested in them in the past, or maybe just learned about them recently, and now got the disposable income that they can use for their hobbies. So I think it's basically this connection of resellers, people with disposable income and short-term attention span, and not much patience, so they buy up the first offer they see. And of course, there's also not really the scarcity of the games, but condition. I mean, we're talking, for example, if it's about Nintendo, we're talking about games that are made in cardboards, paper cardboards. And I mean, you can keep them as cool and store them as dark as you want and safe as you want. Sooner or later, those paper cardboards, they're not made for eternity. They were made as child's products. So, I mean, it's also, so the quality of those cardboards when Nintendo back then produced them was probably not, okay, guys, 30 years from now, we will have nifty collectors wanting to buy them mint and top condition. So I think those factors all play together, which led to a surge of the retro pricings. But I think it also like sometimes it's just like this bandwagon phenomena. For example, in Japan, you got the retro or like the subculture gaming chain Surugaya. Some of you might have heard of it. They're like one of the biggest cultural shop chains in Japan. And they basically, to some extent, dictate the prices of in the market in Japan. So Surugaya puts, let's say, ZAS out for $1,500. What the other sellers will do, they will not like drop their prices in order to sell their goods. They will adjust their prices to Surugaya.
Right.
Interesting. Yeah. So I did a good choice in buying it 4 years ago.
$60, I think, was a steal. Yes, even 4 years ago, I think it was a steal. So, congratulations.
The problem was DHL. I mean, it passed customs, no problem. But in the sorting center for my city, some guy decided it goes against the terms of services, and they returned it to China.
I remember.
And I had to get it sent to me a second time.
I remember we talked about it before.
Yes, after it passed customs. That was so crazy. So they had to ship it a second time, and in this time they relied on the customs form and said book, and then it went through. You know, and to this day, DHL Germany denies refunding the sender. So hey, fortunately, I was just a customer, so it's their loss, not mine. But it's still silly. Anyway, you were talking about the stores, and perhaps Martin can jump in because he told me when we prepared for this interview that he has heard about those little retro stores. Perhaps Martin, you can throw in your perspective.
Well, I just really don't know where you wanted me to start there.
I have heard, you're talking about retro stores. I have heard from a friend that has family in Japan and goes there quite often that there is they've got like little vending machines where you can get retro stuff.
Yeah. They came up with those a couple of years ago. I think there are shops or like places where you can they are like low level or lower level games, obviously. Like you're not going to put in a $500 game to one of those vending machines, but there are vending machines that you can pull out like Famicom cartridges. I mean, that's the most basic thing, because like Famicom cartridges without a cardboard package, without the manual, I mean, the abundance of those games and cartridges in Japan is astonishing. Like back then when I first visited, they would have like huge like baskets, and you could like just grab with your hands, dive into it, a lot of hundreds of loose Famicom cards, because they wouldn't know what to do with them.
Right.
So yeah, there are those vending machines also like some kind of, not necessarily a trick, but a new idea to sell off those like rather cheap cards. And of course, because you mentioned our retro shops, Jörg, there are a lot of like Japanese video game retro shops all over Japan. Like with, of course, the main locations, of course, being Osaka and Tokyo, Akihabara. Or let's say the famous ones are all located and gathered there. And it's interesting because there are like small vendor shops, like really mom and pop kind of shops that focus on retro game and like niche games. And they're like the big chains like Surugaya, Super Potato, Mandarak, and how they're all called.
Super Potato?
Super Potato is like one of the most famous chains, retro gaming chains in Japan. I can later share some pictures.
Okay.
They're just called Super Potato, and they're like 100% retro gaming shop. And it's actually quite interesting because they used to be like a regular retro gaming shop, and now they changed more into like, instead of just only selling games, they're more like of experience the retro thing. Like they got like arcade caps there. You can like buy merchandise, not only games. you set foot into one of the stores. The first thing that will jump into your face, like the huge Instagram logo with the account name and everything. You are here, please share, things like that. Which is also interesting, this kind of change, because back then when I was visiting those stores in the past, like you pick out your camera, you get really nasty looks and snarky remarks from the sales clerks, like, oh no, please, no. And nowadays it's like here's our Instagram, don't forget to tag us.
So what do you want to say, Martin? You wanted to say something.
Well, I remember a friend of mine visited Osaka with a friend for, I don't know, for some days or a week. And he showed me pictures, and I saw a lot of these little stores. They're actually having boxes full of hardware where nobody knows if the hardware will work in any way. So you get in there, you buy stuff just unchecked, but from the bottom of the store to the top, all full of it. How do you call these ones?
They are, they basically, a lot of shops have them. They are like, those corners are like literally called junk corners, junk hardware,
Really?
junk software.
Wow.
And it's like it's, of course, it's like a bit of a raffle. You may have bad luck and choose the one device that is like totally broken down and worthless. But most of the times it's some small things, or sometimes even perfectly working devices or games in those junk corners for like a little amount of money, and they work flawlessly.
Okay.
Or just like some contacts dirty, or like some battery leaked out, or something like that. Something that's fixable for anybody with a little bit of experience. You've got like a brand new game or device hardware afterwards then.
Wow, interesting.
So I could get my Neo Geo, and with some luck.
I bought once a Neo Geo controller, IS controller at Book Off. Book Off is like one of the biggest like secondhand goods chain in Japan. The name already gives it away. Book Off, they originally come from books, like secondhand books that you can buy.
Yeah.
Also, don't forget, there's also their sister chain that's called Hard Off. Yeah, any new jokes, now's the chance. So they sell a lot of junk stuff. And I once bought a Neo Geo IS original control arcade stick for I think like $15.
Okay.
When I tested at home, it didn't work. I opened it up, and it was like either some pins were like broken up, or like the cables were like a bit like they had a corrosion on it. So I just called a friend, have it fixed. He just shot the cable a little bit after work, and for $15, and like a beer that I gave him, I had the almost brand new IS controller. And you pay for those sometimes nowadays up to $70-$80 for only a naked controller.
Wow, yeah. I bought an X 2-in-1 arcade controller for Windows for €5. You know, and now if you look at eBay, 60, 50, something.
Yeah.
Like 10, like 5 times, 10 times more. It's crazy. It's really, really crazy. There's one thing about Japanese seller I never understood. I mean, you know, in Germany we have this customs thing. If you don't want to have troubles with customs, then get the invoice printed and attached to the outside of the parcel. You know, and when you ask Swiss sellers or American sellers, no problem. When you ask Japanese sellers, they tell you, sorry, I can't do it. Please cancel your order. And I'm like, why? Don't you have printers in Japan?
No.
What's the problem?
I think, I'm not sure. It might be due to the regulations by the Japanese Post Office that they may not allow that. I'm not sure. And from my experience with Japan and the Japanese society, another very big important thing is that like Japanese people usually don't want to go out of their way in order to change something that is already like set. Like the way it's set, you go down that way. You want an extra wish? No, you don't. Or you have the sushi and want to interchange the sushi parts with another box? No, you don't. What, you want to have something printed on the outer box, although nobody else in Japan wants it? No, you don't.
Even if it conflicts with the rules of the destination country.
In that case, most of the Japanese, also don't forget, like a lot of Japanese, although they learn English in school, are not really that like fluent and long skilled in foreign languages, also in English. So and they don't like hassle. Like rather than having the hassle of like figuring it out and doing it, they will just outright say, no, you know what, I'm gonna cancel.
Okay, so it
Yeah.
depends on the luck of the sellers you have.
I mean,
For
there
me,
there
Okay.
are sellers that are focused on reselling to foreign countries, obviously.
okay.
They most likely won't have any troubles with that because they are used to it. They know what they need to look out for. But regular Japanese sellers that are not that experienced, I'd say most of the time they say it's not worth the hassle, even if it would be worth it, and just cancel it.
Okay. Yeah, well, at least I decided, okay, don't do it. I take whatever is happening here in Germany.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I remember some 12 years ago I was ordered something from Amazon Japan that was before they offered an English version of the homepage, and the seller, he even translated the Amazon invoice for me into English. I was like, oh man, that's so nice. That wasn't necessary, but thank you.
Yeah, those kind of like small things they will actually do. Go out of their way again to do to like satisfy the customer. Add some little Japanese sweets and snacks. Write a handwritten letter. Thanks for buying this game. I hope you enjoyed, and let's see you next time and things like that. Actually, that they will do.
Yeah.
But things like, can you do like change the address? I booked on the other address. Can you please change that? Those kind of things, they're like at least in the past
Okay.
were not really
I never felt it was a language barrier. It was like just like, no, I don't do it.
It is also a cultural thing, exactly. It's a
Okay.
society and cultural thing. Which brings me to a funny anecdote. I went to a Japanese showcase secondhand store in Akihabara in 2003, and showcase stores are basically those are little like showcases in little corner stores that regular people can rent to sell their like secondhand or their old merchandise, animes, figures, games, whatever they want, and the sales clerks will take a bit of a fee out of the money and sell it for them basically, and give them like showcases and shelves where they can display their stuff they want to sell. And once I saw in 2003 in Tokyo, I found a whole set of Samurai Spirit plush figures.
Wow.
So from the SNK, the famous Samurai Showdown series called Samurai Spirits in Japan. And I was like, oh my god, back then I was an avid SNK gaming and merchandise fan. So I said, oh my god, there's a whole complete set of plush figures from Samurai Spirits too. I need those figures, those plush figures. And then like the sales clerk would open up the showcase, look into it, there's no price tag. Well, yeah, then check it for it. No, there's no price tag on it. Yeah, well, I said, well, check on the system. It's not in the system. Either there's a price tag on it or we're going to sell it.
Oh, really?
And I was like, 30 minutes, I was arguing with him. He was pissed. I was pissed. In the last moment, I gave up, you know what? Fuck this shit. I'm not going to take this anymore. I was going to walk away when I looked on the ground and see the price tag that fell off when he opened the showcase. I was like, here you go, you. Oh, I didn't call him you little fucker, but it's what I thought. Here it is. Fucking sell me now the plush figures. And I still got them somewhere up on somewhere. And that's a very good example of a lot of things in Japan work. Like there are certain ways and manners and processes that you stick to. Mm-hmm. You don't go away from them. You don't like change the road or the route, or you don't like turn left, turn right when the way is like forward.
Right.
Because like Japanese people, at least in the past, were like really like not capable of dealing with those kind of things. Though the new generations did change, of course, but I had a lot of those kind of anecdotes back in Japan when I was visiting.
Well, of course, as a buyer, you don't know what kind of seller you are confronted with. If it's a young, open-minded one or an old one going old-fashioned using Google Translate.
Google Translate, there are sellers back there that will like openly like show their dismay towards you for being a foreigner buying Japanese games, even if they need to sell it to you. They won't hide their dismay they have at you entering their store.
Yeah.
Whoa. Okay.
Yeah, so it did get better over the years because I mean there are a lot of influx from foreign tourists, foreign residents, like also this people via Twitter, Japanese retro collectors connecting with foreigners outside of Japan. So I think it's getting better by every year actually.
Yeah, that is actually why we wanted to do this interview, to have a starting point.
Yes.
Because Martin and I, we were actually sitting one Sunday together, going through possible people from Japan we could interview and gather different certain topics of the Japanese retro culture and preserving culture. Because what we figured out over the years is that there are certain countries that nobody covers, like Russia, for example. Then we had the Russian Computer Museum, and actually the technical responsible person is a demo scener. Like, wow, you know. So we always wondered if there's something similar in Japan, and so that is why we wanted to make this series and have you as a starting figure.
Oh, that's nice.
Introducing into the topic, because we were like, who are the Japanese freaks in Germany, and of course your name was dropped. Like, he even knows Japanese, so who is the better person than you know? So yeah. So the starting question was, is retro and those arcade places, are they going down, or is it actually a wrong perspective we people from outside of Japan have?
Yeah. I think in terms of retro gaming, like the regular consumer-based retro gaming, it still surges like crazy. I think there's still a lot of people within Japan buying and selling and trading and playing those games. Like I mentioned earlier, video gaming is not, to some extent at least, not like frowned upon like it was in the past here in Europe, or especially in Germany. Like, you play video games like you're one step away from murdering your family. So
right.
That was
killer
never,
games.
Yeah, that was never like that in here over there in Japan. But you still have to differentiate between like the actual hardcore collectors and game it and nerds, so to speak. We were still niche, and the regular normal people that sometimes buy a game because they want to reenact their childhood, or they like just video games and want to play with the family or show their kids. I think that still you need to differentiate between those two groups. But I think like consumer-based retro gaming is still a big thing in Japan. But what also shows in like Surugaya, the chain that I mentioned, opening up more and more specialty gaming shops all over the country, having now also dedicated English websites or foreign language-based websites for foreign fans, so they can directly order via not reseller, but via like those buying services that a lot of Japanese companies offer nowadays. So I think consumer-based gaming is still going strong. As for the classic, the regular arcades how we know them, I'd say that is actually a dying species, to be honest. Unfortunately, that's actually true. Yeah, a lot of those big places, and now recently, unfortunately, due to Corona, a lot of the big places also in Tokyo had to close down. Like the Sega Tower, I think, and another big one also had to close down. Mikado, one of the most famous one in Japan and outside of Japan, they had to start a crowdfunding campaign so they can pay their bills basically. And I saw over the years that a lot of those arcade places, the classic arcade gaming places, either closed down or had everything exchanged, like those coin medal games, like I wouldn't say gambling, but those kind of like with a touch of gambling kind of medal games they have in Japan, also pachinko parlors and things like that. So it's not anymore like it was in the past. I mean, I think to some extent there's also a natural development, because you just have to see like the hardware generations we have now for regular consumers like PlayStation, Xbox, even Nintendo Switch and everything. Those are so powerful, like on their level, powerful devices. It doesn't make sense to produce a very costly and high quality and high performance arcade game that, you know, with all the development and money and everything, manpower that went in there, you will never get that amount of money or like the revenue and the income back of it, out of it again. I mean, back then 2D games, you know, like the Neo Geo, like was like one of those games that was able to actually deliver the one-on-one arcade feeling.
Right.
Not so Super Nintendo, Mega Drive, or like Super Famicom. Those they're all like toned down game versions of the arcade games. But nowadays it's like the other way around. Like arcade games would never be able to keep up with the actual next gen consoles that we have right now. So I think that's also one of the big reasons why like the Japanese arcade industry is dying down. Also with people losing interest and saying, why should I go to an arcade center and pay money if I can play the game in the same quality on my own TV at home?
Right.
And have it right at my disposal. So I think that's one of the main reasons that in Japan the arcade industry as a whole is dying away. But there's still, of course, those niche arcade centers, game centers that have focused on the niche fans, the hardcore fans, that are focused on like making themselves known via social media and things like the Mikado Game Center, or like shows like Games at DX that also I think help them like get a like revival. Those kind of places, if Corona, how the pandemic once dies hopefully down or gets solved or whatever, I think those places will still go on and thrive. But your one of the like, average game center, I don't think those will survive in the future.
I guess, it's sort of like the same sort of thing that's happened all kind of throughout the world where just arcades have kind of fallen to the wayside because the games you're playing at home are probably way better than the stuff you're playing there, and you don't have to pay the quarter or however much, it is to play the game. Like I'm not going to go to an arcade to play Call of Duty when I can do that for free here, or something. But where there are resurgences, there's a couple I know that have opened up in New Jersey, in the U.S. here. Richie Knuckles has one of them. It's mostly like it's the social aspect of being in a space with other people and playing the games and kind of, the same thing with pinball. And it's interesting you brought up the pachinko parlors because that's like we talked to Hagen Krentz, and that was pachinko was the what became pinball. That was like the precursor to pinball.
Right.
You
mean barcades?
No, pachinko. It's a game.
The places that open.
Yes.
Arcades.
They've been calling them barcades. Yes, but it's also just. But again, it's mostly based on the social aspect of being in a space with other people playing games. Competitively playing games. I remember being a kid and going to the arcade and playing. I think this is kind of later on. This is in the '90s. I think Soul Calibur was what we were playing, and we would just. I'd get on that. I was really good with one character, and it was just kind of like I'd get on there, and people would just come up and challenge you, and just keep destroying them and over and over again. And it was kind of like, just the social aspect of just being able to play against people in a space. And I think that's lost a lot, but it's coming back in little niche markets.
Exactly, that's what I think. Also, like the barcades, like you have already mentioned, and also these niche game centers. They're not just focused on people being able to play the games, because frankly they can play them on any console, on any system they want at any time. Mm-hmm. It's more about like the social thing. It's more about the group feeling. It's more about being challenging other people, and about being like a community. I would say. Like the community aspect is something that helps those little niche game centers to thrive. Together, of course, like I said, with social media, making live events, making tournaments, and over via internet and Twitter and everything. Mm-hmm. So I think that keeps those places alive, while the regular game centers that were just existing for people to be able to play the games and have like quarter muncher caps, most of them I think they either closed down or they focused on like those metal games or like the Purikura, the self-shooting camera caps and things like that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So do you think after the pandemic they could revive? Or do you think they will stay dying out? They will keep dying out?
I'd say the small ones that somehow will manage to survive, they will definitely revive due to the community. So we have very strong communities behind them who are supporting them, who like paying, like make crowdfunding donation campaigns so they can pay their rent and bills basically. But the regular ones, I think they will close down. Like I said, Sega Tower, one of the landmarks of like Japanese arcade game center culture in Japan, in Akihabara. I mean, they had recently to close down. I saw on Twitter another quite famous and old place had to close down due to the pandemic. I think those regular places that have not kind of like niche existence and that those communities and followers behind them to back them up, they will lose out on this basically.
So good, I have been in Japan already. Martin, you wanted to say something. You wanted to throw in
Well, I actually think that all the videos I see on YouTube, for example, when I look for arcades and stuff I don't know or we don't have here in Germany. Actually, here we have one arcade here in Cologne there, and that's it. That if I want to feel or have the arcade feeling, I have to drive to Seligenstadt to the Flippern Arcade Museum. So I always see these more special arcades like DDR Max or Dance Rush, where actually the people, these are controllers you can't have at home. I have my DDR stuff here for all kinds of consoles, but if you have these machines, big machines with big lightning and showing off actually, and I think what I feel is that people show off they do their stuff also to get other people known to other people. Actually, I don't know how the culture is in Japan.
Yeah. In Japan, I think it's a bit similar. Though those who do it like on a very high level, like very good level, usually they meet up with their friends. They go with their friends and they do their routine, crazy breakdancing stuff, but not necessarily to meet or greet other people. Basically, they're like you got like those crazy YouTube videos with people like having their eyes like shut, like closed, and like having a mask over and like playing Taiko Tatsujin, both similar two-player mode alone with their backs turned to the cap and doing like perfect on hardest level. I mean, those kind of people just go there to I don't know what, maybe like meditate while doing that, but most of them say not rather to like meet new people. That I think is still like is more with the regular caps and the regular like the fighting community and those kind of things. And I think that's like actually what is dying out in most of the game centers that are left, that are not these kind of niche special ones with a specific like community or followership. The candy caps, so-called candy caps, like the Sega Blast City or like the Capcom Impress, the EQUET 2 from Taito, like those machines where you play the 2D games like Metal Slug, Street Fighter series, King of Fighters, those kind of games. Those game centers that are really like focusing on those, I think there's not much left of them. So they do somehow thrive in their own niche corner and survive, but I don't think there will be like a big revival focusing on that kind of gaming.
King of Fighters, you just brought back memories when you said that. That was a good game.
Yeah, great game, especially when like me, you were in Singapore with your parents as a 17-year-old and getting your ass whooped by like 7-year-old Indian kids. Because they play all day, all night long. They only play King of Fighters 98 back then, and you come in like all pouting, like flirting like you're some kind of big peacock, and then you get like feathers whipped out basically.
Well, I had like I loved those kids and just like that was another game I was good at, and I was good at it cheaply, like you know, I remember distinctly we had friends and I, we figured it out. We called it ball theory, because there's the one guy that's got the ball on a chain, and all you do is just whip the thing around, and no one can get at you. No one can get near you. They come at you, they hit the ball, and so you just stand there swinging this ball around the whole time, and you know, these kids would get so angry because, you know, you're just they can't touch you.
Yeah.
Talking about communities or circles, I think it's called in Japan. Do you have any experiences with, I don't know if I pronounce it correctly, Dojin Softu?
Dojin software basically. Yeah, I don't collect them that much, or I'm like that much into them, but I got a lot of friends here in Germany and also Japan who got like very huge collections of Dojin software. I mean, like, to do an explanation again, Dojin software is basically like homebrew. It's like the Japanese term for homebrew software that like most like 1-2 people work at home and then publish them at like the Game Legend events in Japan. I mean, there are like series like the Toho series from Zun. I mean, one of the most famous like shooting and like bullet hell series, like, and the whole off-spins that they created. It was originally a Dojin soft made by Zun himself. So yeah, I mean it's a big scene, a big thing in Japan, and I think also outside of Japan, it's quite known and loved by a lot of gamers. So, it's not anymore like like the niche of the niche of the niche, like only certain like people knowing about it. Thanks to the internet and globalization, I think a lot of gamers now know about those games. I mean, you can't even go to the German MediaMarkt or Saturn electric retailer chains shops, and they will have like Toho games there for PlayStation. They will have Dogen Soft games that came out in Japan like 2 years ago. They will have the German or at least English localized versions sitting in the shelves in a German electric retailer shop. I mean, imagine that. When I started reading manga back then when was that? Like in 97, 96, people would ridicule me and call and throw slurs at me for reading strange Japanese adult novels or like reading like Sailor Moon porn. You would have to hide your mangas from people so they don't like get agitated at you. And now you got like Dogen software games from Japan at the biggest German retailer shop.
Mm-hmm.
So it's quite interesting how globalization and also the internet changed this from a positive thing. Well, of course, from a collector's view, if you're like into like really niche, like heavy hitter, expensive game collecting, for example, take the Neo Geo, then of course like this globalization actually like backfires in that kind of sense.
Yeah.
So at least you got your pension secured now.
I wouldn't bet on that because I don't plan on selling them, and to be honest, you never know. Like it could be like 10, 15 years. Yeah. In 10, 15 years, it could be worth it maybe because nobody's anymore interested. And I don't know, Facebook V2 is the new next thing and people focus on that. Who knows?
Yeah.
So it's a bit like stock trade. Like you don't actually make money on it, but there's the risk that it loses the value.
It's actually true. We are mentioned that all the time. Since 2010, when this retro craze started, it's not going down for any bit at the moment. Luckily, I'm very happy for it because I can buy brand new produced Mega Drive controllers. Oh my god!
I'd like it to have a lull just a little bit so I can get like get another 1581 drive for less than $700.
Yes, my friend. That is why I started like 22 years ago. When things were doing better. Well, it's a good perspective. Also, when we did our research, Martin and I discovered there are some organizations doing preserve work.
Yes.
Which is also something that doesn't seem to be very supported by the governments because they are running off donations, we found.
Yeah, I forgot the name of the organization, but there are several one and also a big one that are focused on like refurbishing or like also like renewing or like keeping the history of those games alive, basically. And I think not necessarily in the same kind of way as like organization or museum. I would mention here the Beep shop. Maybe some of you have heard from it. It's like also it started as a small little like niche retro gaming shop with arcade gaming and stuff like that. And now they're like publishing on their own like Cotton and like the old Japanese classic games. They're republishing them, remaking them. Mm-hmm. And it's still, and now in Japan, they got quite a bit good standing, and also outside of Japan. So there's this research of interest in Japanese retro gaming, like the old stuff, and wanting to keep those things alive, keep that culture and that history alive, which I think is actually a great thing. Because I mean, there are games that were noted like the prototypes. Some avid collector owns one prototype game from the PC Engine, for example, is PC Kororo, I think, or something like that. It's like just this one prototype copy, and he owns it. And who knows? Maybe if the CD dies down, if the game dies or the disc dies down, basically, you will have lost the game forever.
That's sad.
So I think those preserving organizations and those companies who of course do it for their own benefit, but who like more publish the old classic games and make them more known to a bigger group of people, I think in the end we're all benefiting from it. besides maybe the surge, the rise of prices for retro games. Besides that, I think we're actually in the golden era of like retro, I would let's say call it, where you can get all the information you need, have access to all the games you want to play, and there are so many solutions, devices, remakes, and everything that like everybody can find their own niche where they can be happy. I think it's actually a great time.
That's true.
Although a lot of people is going, oh my god, everything was bad in the past. I only paid like $5 for Metal Slug, and my Neo Geo only cost me $10. Yeah, but those times are gone. So we should, I think, focus on like the positive aspects that have come with globalization and the internet, and everything.
Right, like reproductions of old controllers for the Mega Drive. I mean, I was looking for years for good controllers of the Mega Drive, and oh my God, did they age badly? And you know, they have this pad inside for the connection and stuff, and it was just falling apart. So no way to repairing the controller. You can just put it in the trash can, you know. Nintendo controllers, on the other hand, don't have this issue. So yeah, exactly. It was this rubber pad. Oh my God, you know.
Okay.
Dry rots and falls apart over time.
Exactly. It was like, oh my God, you know. So it's good that we can buy those new nowadays. That's amazing.
Oh God, yeah. There's so much stuff that is new for retro stuff because it's in. You know, like again for the 64 and the Amiga, and actually anything with an RS-232 serial port, there's Wi-Fi modems for them. So you can plug that into anything. You know, we've got the SD to IEC on the C64. I mean, just the fact that it is kind of like the golden era of retro computing, because we've got stuff that I would have killed for back in the early 90s, late 80s, when I was actually using these machines on the daily, to have like to be able to have a 32 gig SD card, and that's like that even the hard drives you could get were only like 20 megs.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
I could fit the entirety, every C64 piece of software on this one SD card and have access to it all at once.
That's true. Yeah, it's really interesting. It depends on, as Dennis said, what you want.
Yeah.
If you want old games for cheap, you are living in the wrong place.
Yes, that is true.
In the wrong time period. If you want replacement parts, they call it aftermarket parts. That's really amazing, you could try like 20 years ago getting replacement Game Boy shells. There was no such thing, Nintendo said the lifetime of the console is over. Everything is coming after us. And suddenly the Chinese are like making really good quality aftermarket Game Boy shells.
Well, you've got, Tormod is modifying them and doing things. There's so many things you can get with stuff now.
True.
And so many people that are making modifications that are like mass produced modifications that like everybody can get and add this on. It's
Exactly, and I think one thing we should not forget is that like for those people who just want to experience the games and play, it's like the best time ever. You don't need to shell out big bucks for games. You don't need to like brown nose any collectors to get their games. You don't need to wander through the wilderness to find that one game that you want. You can play it like almost on every console system, wherever you want, and still to some extent get the original feeling, the original quality.
Yeah,
I think that's also another aspect that, of course, leads to the surge of prices. But you have access to the games in Japan, in the Japanese retro market. Those were back then in like when I started collecting, actually focused on Japanese games back in 2000, 2002 around. There was what we call in German a book with 7 seals, a book with 7 Siegeln.
Yeah,
like you either have connections to Japan, or you would need to go to one of the import shops would then of course what do you call it, like smack like another 200% revenue or like price increase on the game, on the original price. You would pay like hefty amounts of money for back then next gen games that were not available in the regular markets. You could not access them. You were relying on those import specialty shops here in Germany. Like what was it called again? There's the one famous one, something Krause shop. No, König shop. There's one.
I don't know.
There's one of those bigger ones, and they would have like ridiculous overpriced prices, and you would pay them. Either you know somebody from Japan, or you pay those prices, or you just read about those games in the main magazine, and that's it.
It's still the case with games from Brazil. That's exactly the same problem. You need to know somebody living in Brazil, and the parents of my friends they say like, oh, are you buying retro trash for your German friend again?
And he probably answers, no, Marpa, I'm building up a big reselling imperium here.
Yeah.
I mean, at least for the Japanese market, it's all at the tip of your fingers. It's all available now. Yeah. Even the heavy hitters, even those games that you would need still back then or nowadays also need to shell huge amounts of money, they're still available for you.
Yeah, well, you can get ROMs from places. There's there's even like game streaming like who were Antstream.
Antstream. Yeah.
I don't know if they're available in Japan, but I mean it's
they have expanded the network. They also have servers now in Asia. So yes.
Yeah, not in the US, but.
Yes, no, they do.
Oh, they do.
They actually made it free to play a month ago, and actually on the same time expanded their servers into Asia and America.
I need to reactivate my account or something because I haven't looked at that in a while.
No, actually, you have to write the port and tell them to switch your account from paid to free, and then you can access the whole service free to play. It's actually promotion based and stuff. Yeah. Well, very nice. That is
awesome. Yes.
Learned a lot today. It's incredible. Yeah.
And like I said, actually, on Twitter, I'm connected to quite a lot of retro Japanese collectors and also some people who publish their own stuff, own books and like at the Game Legend events and stuff like that. And it sounds a bit like brag now, I admit, but I've got more than 1,900 followers on Twitter.
Really? Yeah. You should tell me your Twitter. I didn't know your Twitter.
No, I'm not telling you. Not Japanese. Only Japanese people following me.
Okay.
That's only as many. That's almost as many followers as my dog has on Instagram. He's a Japanese chin.
Ah.
Yeah, you see,
bringing it full circle.
Right.
Sure.
Great.
Awesome.
Well, wonderful.
Yes.
So,
is there a website that people can go to follow what you're doing? Instagram, Twitter, any of that stuff that you want to plug?
Twitter, yes. I can share my own later on my account. It's basically retrogames_JP on Twitter.
Nice. We'll put links to this down. I'm pointing, but I don't know where. We'll put links to everything in the podcast description. Yeah. Yeah, we'll put links to all this in the podcast description so that everybody can check out what you're doing and follow along at home.
If you click on it, that is, of course, you to understand Japanese because 90% of my tweets are in Japanese.
Well, that's okay. I mean,
it's interesting. I mean, we had once for an episode, we had the most listeners were from China.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So it really depends on the topic of the podcast guest we figured out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. Nice. So basically, it's all on your Twitter.
I also got a YouTube channel that's mainly German, but I admit it's like I got a couple of videos and that's it. I always say to myself, today we're gonna cut and do a video, and then I end up playing Assassin's Creed or something like that.
Yeah, I know exactly how you feel. That's the story of my life.
I mean,
The
I open
pain
up
of
to like what is it called, like magic tools or something like those tools, and I look at them all the interfaces and say, oh my god, I can't deal with this, and then I close them again.
So thank you for sitting with us. It's been awesome. And thank you much.
Thank you also for inviting me. I think it was very interesting and awesome podcast with you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.